My family forced me to pay triple rent to support my favorite brother for free. But when they plotted to steal my $8,000 savings, I disappeared with everything and left them empty-handed. I'm 22 years old. I study software design and work part-time as a junior developer, and honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened a few months ago still has me processing everything. Like, did my family really think I was going to put up with that situation forever? I guess I should start from the beginning, so this whole mess makes sense. Because the thing is, I was always the responsible kid, you know? The one who did things right, who paid his bills, who didn't cause problems. But it turns out that being responsible in my family basically meant being invisible, while my brother Colin, who's 23, was treated like he was the second coming of Christ or something. For as long as I can remember, Colin was always the golden child. I mean, literally he could do whatever he wanted, and my parents would find a way to justify it or say it was part of his maturing process, or some excuse like that. While I, who got good grades and worked and did everything right, basically got a good job every now and then, and that was it. When Colin was like 19, he married super young with his girlfriend at the time. They had a baby a year later and then another one, and my parents were happy, like celebrating as if it was the achievement of the century. While when I told them I wanted to study software design and eventually open my own development business, my dad basically said something like, "That's fine, but make sure you have a plan B, because according to him, those things never work out." You know how frustrating that is? So anyway, when I turned 18 and was still living at home while studying, my parents told me I had to start paying rent, which, okay, seemed fair to me. I was working part-time and could cover that. So I started paying them $550 a month, which wasn't little considering I was in college and working half-time, but well, it was my contribution to the house and I accepted it without a problem. I had my room, my things, my space to study and work on, my coding projects, and even though my parents weren't the most affectionate or attentive with me, at least there was some stability, you know what I mean? Things were like that. Let's say, manageable. Until, like 8 months ago, Colin showed up one day with his wife and his 2 kids, one like 3 years old, and another about a year and a half, saying they needed to stay with my parents temporarily, because supposedly he was about to close a giant business deal that was going to give him millions of dollars, literal millions, and he just needed a place to stay while it all came together. My mom practically cried with happiness, like, "Oh, of course, my love, this is your home, stay as long as you need." And me there thinking, wait, is nobody going to ask him details about that supposed million-dollar business? But anyway, Colin moved in with his whole family in the guest room and in the living room, basically, and from day one, he didn't pay a single cent of rent, not even a week. Past when my mom came into my room one night, like at 10 at night when I was coding for a school project, and told me they needed to talk to me about the house situation. I thought it was going to be something about keeping the noise down because the kids went to bed early or something reasonable like that, but no. Turns out what they wanted was for me to start paying more rent, like $750 a month instead of $550, because according to them, with Colin and his family living there, the expenses had gone up a lot. Electricity, water, food, and they needed me to contribute more as a family member. I sat there staring at her like she'd grown another head, because, I mean, are you seriously asking me to pay for your decision to let Colin live here for free with his whole family? I told her that didn't make sense, that if Colin was going to receive millions soon, then why couldn't he pay some rent now or at least contribute to expenses? And my mom got all defensive, saying that Colin was in a difficult situation, that he had 2 kids to support, that the business was going to take a bit more time than expected, and that I, as his brother, should be more understanding and supportive. I told her I was also studying and working and saving for my future, that it wasn't fair for them to ask me for more money when they weren't even charging him anything, and she basically told me I was selfish, and that I'd always been the child who only thought about himself. Literally, my hands were shaking when she left my room because I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. Like I'm the selfish one, when I've been paying rent religiously for years, while your favorite son has never contributed anything. But I decided to pay the $750 because honestly, I didn't have many options at that moment. I was in the middle of the semester and couldn't afford the distraction of looking for a new place. So I swallowed my pride and paid, thinking that maybe it was temporary, that maybe Colin really was going to leave soon when his business came through, although I was increasingly doubting that business actually existed. Weeks passed, and the situation in the house got worse and worse. Colin's kids ran everywhere, screamed, cried. And look, I have nothing against kids, but living with two toddlers when you're trying to study and work is basically impossible. I had online classes several times a week and meetings with my work team, and I couldn't get even 5 minutes of silence. Then one day, like 3 weeks after I started paying the higher rent, my dad called me to the living room and told me they needed to put a toddler bed in my room because Colin's youngest didn't fit well in the room with them anymore and needed his own space. I looked at him and said, "Are you serious? You want to put a toddler bed in my room? The room I'm paying $750 a month for?" And he told me it was just temporary, that it would be for a few weeks until they found a better solution, and that I should be more flexible because family helps each other. I said no, absolutely not. That my room was my private space, and that if they needed more space for Colin's kids, then maybe Colin should consider finding his own place. And my dad got angry, like really angry. He told me I was ungrateful, that they had given me a roof and food my whole life, and that the least I could do was cooperate. The situation with Colin's wife didn't help at all either. She had this super passive-aggressive attitude with me all the time, like she'd come into my room without knocking to look for something, or move my things from the kitchen when I was cooking and then say, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know that was yours," with a little smile that clearly said she did know. One day I found her going through my desk, literally with my university papers in her hands, and when I asked her what she was doing, she told me she was just seeing if there was anything interesting and that I shouldn't be so territorial. Can you believe it? In the room that I'm paying for, she feels she has the right to go through my stuff. Everything reached a breaking point like 2 months later. I was in the kitchen late at night, like at 11, making tea because I couldn't sleep with all the stress. And I heard Colin and my mom talking in the living room. They thought I was in my room with the door closed, but I could hear them perfectly. Colin was telling my mom that I had savings, that he knew I'd been saving money from my job for years, which, yeah, was true. I had like $8,000 saved to eventually start my business, and that maybe I could lend some of that money to the family to help with expenses while his business came through. My mom told him she was going to talk to me about that maybe I'd be willing to contribute more considering we were family and that Colin needed it more than I did at that moment. I stood there in the kitchen feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. Because the reality was that my own parents, my own brother, were basically planning to ask me, or rather pressure me, to give them the money I'd worked so hard to save, the money that was my safety net and my future, to cover Colin's and his family's expenses when they weren't even paying rent. In that moment, I knew I had to get out of there, that there was no way this was going to get better, that as long as I stayed in that house, I was going to keep being the family ATM while Colin was treated like royalty. That same night, without telling anyone, I started looking for apartments online, checking prices, locations, calculating what I could afford with my current salary. Most of the places I found were out of my budget if I wanted to live alone, like $1,200 or $1,400 a month plus utilities. But then I found an ad from someone looking for a roommate, a guy named Owen who was 24 and worked in marketing, and the available room was $400 a month plus half the utilities. I wrote to him that same night. We met the next day at a coffee shop. He told my parents I had an extra class. And Owen turned out to be super chill. No drama. We hit it off right away. And he told me the room was mine, if I wanted it. During the next 3 weeks, I started packing my things in secret, little by little, putting clothes and personal items in boxes that I hid in my closet or under my bed, taking some things out in my backpack every time I left the house, with the excuse of going to class or work. It was exhausting, living that double life, acting like everything was normal while planning my escape, but I couldn't tell them anything, because I knew that if my parents found out, they were going to do everything possible to stop me, to make me feel guilty, to convince me to stay. My mom tried to talk to me about lending money to Colin, like twice during those weeks, and I just said I was going to think about it, that I needed to check my finances, whatever to buy, time. Finally, the day came. A Saturday. My parents and Colin with his whole family were going to a barbecue at my uncle's house that was like an hour and a half away. They were going to be gone all day. I told them I couldn't go because I had an important work project to turn in lie, but I needed the excuse. And as soon as they left at 11 in the morning, I called Owen and a friend from college who had a truck. We packed everything, my bed disassembled, my desk, my clothes, my books, my computer, everything that was mine, left that house in less than 4 hours. I left the keys on the kitchen table with a super short note that said, "I moved out. I don't live here anymore. I'll let you know my new address when I'm ready. Avery." I didn't put much emotion in the note because honestly, I didn't feel I owed any extensive explanation to people who had basically treated me like a walking bank while they pampered my brother and his family. I felt weird when I closed that house's door for the last time, like a mix between relief and sadness, because despite everything it was where I'd grown up, but I knew I was doing the right thing, that I needed to get out of there before they completely drained me. I got to the apartment with Owen like at 4 in the afternoon. We started unpacking my stuff, and around 6 my phone started ringing. It was my mom. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, and again, and again. Like 15 missed calls in 30 minutes. I finally wrote her a message saying I was okay, that I no longer lived in the house, that I'd found another place, and that I needed space. 2 minutes later, my phone exploded with a call from her. I answered, and she basically yelled at me for 10 straight minutes without letting me talk. That how dare I leave like that? That I was ungrateful. That after everything they'd done for me, I was abandoning them like they were trash. That Colin needed my support in this difficult time, and I only thought about myself. That what was she going to tell the family when they asked about me? I told her as calmly as I could that what they'd been doing to me wasn't fair, that I'd been paying rent religiously while Colin paid nothing, that they'd asked me to pay more to cover his expenses, that they even wanted to put his kid in my room, and that on top of that they were planning to ask for my savings. She interrupted me, saying that I'd overheard a private conversation and that I'd misinterpreted everything, that they only wanted the best for the whole family, and that if I really loved them, I'd understand that sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the people you love. I told her I'd been making sacrifices for years while Colin never had to make any, and she hung up on me. During the next few days, I got messages from everyone. My mom sent guilt trip texts like, "I can't believe you did this to us. Your father is devastated. The family is disappointed in you." Colin wrote to me, first trying to act, understanding like, "Hey brother, I know things have been tense, but you should come back. We can fix this." And when I didn't respond, he sent me another really aggressive message saying I was selfish and that if I had so much money saved, the least I could do was help my family instead of spending it on an unnecessary apartment. My dad called me once and literally told me, "You're the most ungrateful son I've ever known. Your mother is crying every day because of you." And I told him I was very sorry, but I wasn't going back or giving them money. And he hung up on me. Colin's wife even sent me a message. She didn't even have my number before. She had to ask someone for it, saying that because of me her kids didn't have an uncle to trust, and that I'd destroyed the family with my selfishness. I blocked almost everyone after like a week of constant messages. I only left my mom unblocked in case there was any real emergency, but I put her conversation on mute. Owen asked me if I was okay, several times during those first days, and I told him the whole situation. He basically told me, "Man, you did the right thing." That situation was super toxic, and that helped me a bit because I was starting to doubt myself with all the guilt trip messages. It's been like 4 months since I moved out, and honestly my life improved in every way. I pay $400, rent plus like 100 inches utilities. I mean less than half of what I was paying at my parents' house. I have my own space without anyone invading my privacy or asking for my money. I can study in peace. My grades improved. At work, they even gave me a small raise because I've been more focused and productive. Owen and I get along super well. We each do our thing. We split house chores 50 to 50, zero drama. My savings are still intact, and actually, I've been able to save a bit more each month. I'm closer to my goal of eventually opening my own development business. My mom wrote to me like 2 weeks ago telling me that Colin and his family finally moved out of the house because they got a better place. You suspect the famous $1 million business never existed. And finally, my parents got tired of supporting them. But who knows? And that now that they're not there, maybe I'd want to come back. That they miss me. That things can be different. I responded after 2 days, pretty short, that I was fine where I was, that I was glad they'd found a solution, but that I had no plans to return. She didn't respond after that. Sometimes I feel guilty. I'm not going to lie. Like I grew up with the idea that family is the most important thing, and that you always have to be there for them no matter what. But then I remember everything that happened, how they treated me, how they expected me to sacrifice my future for my brother's irresponsible decisions, and the guilt goes away. I don't know if things will ever get better with my parents, if we'll be able to have some kind of normal relationship, but for now, I'm focused on myself, on finishing my degree, graduate next year, on growing at my job, on building the life I want. Owen told me the other day while we were watching a movie that he sees me more relaxed, happier, and he's right. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe without someone expecting me to give them something or do something for them. And that, I guess, is enough for now.